it is possible to see why an environmental movement that was trying to raise awareness of the people on how the environment is destroyed by even governments which are non-accountable. In the light of what is happening, we can say it's because we were dealing with a dictatorial government, a government that did not want to be responsible to its people. That's the kind of development that we do not want. And raising the awareness of the people to that level is easy to be seen as subversive.
But it's clear.
If you read the Bible, especially the first book of the Bible, the book of Genesis, in a light touch, you will see that God, in his infinite wisdom, he created all the other species before he created the human species. The human species is created last. And in a light touch, when you think about it, God, in his infinite wisdom, decided to create us on the last day, say on Friday, when you think about the Jewish week rather than our Christian week. God must have started creating on Sunday. Now, if God did not have the infinite wisdom and created us on Monday, for example, many of us would have been dead on Tuesday because there were not the essential elements for us to survive. Think about that. That should give us a certain amount of humility as a species, that we cannot live without the other species. But on the contrary, many other species can live very happily. In fact, many of them would thrive if our species was to move or was to be exterminated at the rate that we are exterminating other species. And so we should maybe change our perception of who is very important on this planet, perhaps to realize that we may be more intelligent than the other species, but perhaps we should be custodians rather than dominions of the other species. And in fact, amongst many theologians today, they are saying that there may have been some misinterpretation when the Bible says that man was given dominion over the planet, that perhaps it is a misinterpretation of the original concept, that perhaps we, the human species, were meant to be custodians of the other species. But when you think of how important these other species are, we can embrace a certain amount of humility. We are today worried about climate change and the greenhouse gases that we are pumping into the atmosphere. There is a very wonderful movement amongst the companies, among the industrial sector and the business sector, of realizing that we need to be a little more responsible, that we need to be able to do business not only today but in the future. And therefore we need to have a responsibility towards the environment as well. And I think that protection of forests in particular is extremely important. And I am goodwill ambassador of the forest, of the Congo forest, and I try to remind ourselves of the Amazon forest and the forest in Southeast Asia, and say that we need to make sure that our governments, now that they are negotiating the post-Kyoto protocol, that they make sure that forests, standing forests, and especially tropical standing forests, are included in the post-Kyoto protocol as part of the solution to the greenhouse gas controls. And this is partly because I was personally very surprised when I learned from the scientists that 20% of the greenhouse gases that are being pumped into the atmosphere are coming from deforestation and degraded forests, especially from the tropics. And that 20% is more than what is being produced by the whole transport sector put together. That was for me an eye-opener, because I thought that the transport sector is the major culprit. But to hear that the transport sector is not as harmful as the deforestation and forest degradation was for me an eye-opener. And I have therefore been pleading with all of us to speak to our leaders wherever we can, to persuade them that as they negotiate, and they are doing it now as we speak, the final negotiations will be done in Copenhagen towards the end of next year, that we make sure that especially the United States of America is on board, and that forests are put there as part of